Okay, we're live. Hey, Tommy. So we got Tommy Lather over here on Sonic Combinator, and you have construction background, you do technology, and you live in North Carolina. So many different ways we can take this. So where do we begin? How you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Excellent, excellent. Thanks for joining. I appreciate this. So what is this technology that you're so heavily into?
So for work, I'm trying to figure out how to use AI to guide our customers to make better decisions, what they bid, who they bid, manage their sales pipeline a little bit better than just going off of gut feeling.
Nice. Okay. What kind of technology stack are we dealing with?
Yeah, so we're using Claude to scan through hundreds of pages of PDF documents to extract and give our customers sort of a condensed TLDR little summary of each set of drawings. Typical construction set includes, upwards of 300, 400, 500 pages of drawings, many of which are not relevant for a given specialty contractor. So we're just kind of giving them the bite-sized summary of what it is and whether or not it's worth their time.
Oh, that's really impressive. First of all, I didn't know Claude had that kind of a context level. You're doing lots and lots of pages here. So can you walk me through, Tommy, just like a typical user journey, like a customer, and how do they find you? And then what is the service you're selling them? And then what is that process of them acquiring and paying for that service?
Sure. So our business is based on relationships. Investors don't like to hear it, but we are a very human-centric business. We get to know our customers. So most of them come in through our network, through SEO. I'm proud to say we have a pretty stellar reputation. So customers come in, we get to know them. Our core service is performing takeoffs. So a takeoff is we take these hundreds of pages of blueprints and we count and measure all the materials required for a given contractor's scope of work. We happen to specialize in site work, so landscape, irrigation, concrete, retaining walls. We crank out between 100 and 200 projects per day.
Wow.
And it's all repeat business. So our customers, we essentially become an extension of our customers' offices. With their pre-construction team, we crank these out, and they're like our coworkers in a sense.
Right.
So the AI comes in where we have many customers who they receive 300, 400, 500 project correspondence each day. So these are coming from platforms like Building Connected, Procore, Construct Connect, and their addendas, their invitations to bid, RFIs, is just all this stuff. And it's far too much for a single person to go through and review. And so that's where our AI is coming in, where it's scanning through all of these emails, determining, should we look further into this one? Should we just toss that one? And so it's speeding up our customers' qualification process a good clip.
I see. So, and who is your typical customer?
Most of our customers by count are contractors. Most fall between 5 and 100 million in annual revenue. They're throughout the United States. We happen to be pretty heavy in Texas and Florida. They're some sort of site work contractor. It's all commercial, not much we can do with residential. And then there's also distributors. So supply houses that supply these materials for this same group of contractors. Some of them offer our services for free to their better customers, and they pay us for it, obviously. And so that's been a great channel.
And I'll kind of build a scenario and you correct me if I'm wrong, Tommy. So construction crew out there, company, relatively large, let's say does 50 million annually. They want to build a retaining wall for some commercial building, right? So they already have the contract. Now, where does Takeoff Monkey come into play?
So we actually come into play before they get the contract. So
Okay.
The win rate for commercial contractors on average is about 15%. So these guys have to crank out a lot of bids just to maintain their status quo. So
Okay.
they'll come to us with the drawings. They usually have about 2 weeks to turn in a bid. They flip the drawings over to us. We tell them, all right, for this wall, you need X tons of stone, linear feet of this type of wall, that type of wall. And we deliver that in a marked up PDF. Everything's color coded, labeled very neatly. And then the data. So it's a parts list, essentially.
Right.
And that comes in whatever format the customer needs.
Okay, I get it now. That makes sense. Okay, so if the construction team wants to build a retaining wall, they ask you, like, hey, Tommy, or Takeoff Monkey in this case, I need to build a retaining wall. Tell me all the materials, the number down to the detailed quantity, how much it's going to cost me to put this wall together. They use that information to submit the bid, let's say it's to the city or the municipality, in order to win that. And then it increases their chances of winning because now they've done the research, leveraging your capability.
Correct. And so what we do is dangerous if we're wrong and they include 100 tons of stone, but they really need 1,000. That would obviously be problematic.
Right.
And so a huge amount of trust our customers place in us to get it right, and we do.
Wow, that's so cool. So do you, what kind of like certifications allow you to do this as well?
Construction is a pretty unregulated industry.
What?
So we're going off of our reputation and just our relationships.
Wow. Okay. But then at some point, the construction team has their license on the line, right? Because it would be a general contractor, let's say.
Of course, yes, our contractors carry whatever licenses are required for their scope of work.
Okay. So you probably have like nice disclaimers like, hey, please do your own research. This is a recommendation only kind of a thing. Nice.
Something like that, yeah.
Okay. And so what are like typical charges? What's a typical ticket item for you or something that's common? Let's start there.
So most of our customers, about 80%, pay us a flat rate, and that flat rate ranges from anywhere from $1,700 a month upwards of, we have some distributors paying over $50,000 a month. And that gets them, that keeps their pipeline full for whatever volume, and that can be 30, 40 projects a day, or it can be, 1 or 2 a week.
Right. And how did you come up with those prices? I imagine initially it was kind of based on the consumption of AI, the amount of value that you're bringing to the table, cost savings in time, resources, expertise. Can you put some brackets around that?
So most of the actual counting and measuring is still a human process. So it's based on how long we know it'll take for this scope of work for this many pages. So counting pages isn't always the most accurate. You can have pages with a lot of work on them and some with very little, but we've come up with a rate that averages out and everybody wins.
Gotcha. Okay. And then you can adjust. So it's what I'm understanding is kind of a subscription model, but it's based on level of consumption.
Correct.
So if I start in at the lower tier and then my consumption is, hey, I got to crank out a whole bunch of more bids this month, I need to now upgrade my tier essentially.
Exactly. And we understand the ebb and flows. So we'll let our customers extend their limit by as much as twice, knowing that there will also be months where they're significantly below. But we try to be pretty human about it.
Very cool. So you mentioned there's part of that process is manual, which I completely understand because AI is not quite 100% replacement for, let's say, a high level employee. Anything behind a computer is typically, I would say, can be automated in some way, shape, or form. But then there is that human aspect of just the reality checks of, like you said, right? The page count isn't going to equal cost. Basically, let's put some analysis into this. How much is automated versus how much is still manual? I
would say we're somewhere around 10-15% automated because we're really only automating the selection part. The measuring, counting, we can speed that up. But we can't, the drawings have no standardization. So the drawings come, they come in many different formats, different fonts, different styles, different architects with different meanings. Unless someone can standardize the way architects and engineers output their drawings, automating is going to be pretty difficult at this point.
I see. Okay, so we're still quite not there. And you're using Claude. Image generation, are you using anything from like a Sora to Nano Banana, Gemini Pro 3?
We're not generating a lot of images. I am actually right now experimenting with Qwen.
What is Qwen?
Qwen is a model specifically for analyzing diagrams and documents.
Okay. Do you know which company produced that? Is it one of the big ones?
I just started messing with it this morning. In fact, while we're talking, I'm uploading all of my training data to my instance in Lambda Labs.
Beautiful. What we would call them as like a wrapper, basically. But then on the back end, they're like a Gemini or a ChatGPT or a Claude. And then the front end, they sell a SaaS product, essentially. I imagine similar to what you're doing, right? With like Takeoff Monkey. Let's take it back a little bit, Tommy. So how did you get started with this? When?
I started Takeoff Monkey in 2019. I lived and worked in Texas for about 10 years for a large contractor most of that time. And I found myself without a job, without much of anything. I moved up here to North Carolina to be closer to my folks. Took a job with a contractor. For the first time in my life, I hated my job. I've always loved whatever I'd done, and I hated it. And I had some folks calling, asking, "Hey, can you help me with estimating? I hear you're away from your company." And I started saying yes, and I started business. I had no idea if I was going to be able to pay rent, pay on my truck. I didn't know. It was just desperate. I just went for it, and it worked.
Jeez, that's awesome. You just kind of stumbled right into it. Somebody showed up one day based on your experience in relationships, and they're like, "Hey, Tommy, I know you're really good at this, and you might have some time on your hand. Would you like to do X?" And you're like, "Okay." And so, it's the moment somebody pays you and that revenue starts coming in, instantly you have a business. And it's like, whether you like it or not, you have a business. Now you can decide, well, I can just sell this because it's the relationships, which is the database, that's your CRM. And then it's a proof of concept because now you can deliver a product and make money for it. So now you can either like sell that as a teaching course, right? Some people do that, or you can franchise it out and just be like, "Hey, use my name, use my capabilities, and then just pay me a small fee." Or what you did was, let me just jump head first into this thing and grab AI to help me speed some of the things up. And then, so how quickly, 2019, how quickly did you start ramping up as well?
So 2019 to mid 2020, we grew. I started at 10, 12 grand a month in revenue, and I maybe got up to around 20, 25. But in July of 2020, I got sober, and from there it was almost straight up and to the right ever since then.
Wow! Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
So that's 3 years. What am I doing? 20 to
5.5 years.
5.5 years. Wow. Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. So did that, going sober, did that like propel you somehow? Was it like an awakening kind of a moment where you're like, "Hey, now I'm going to take all my energy and put it into Takeoff Monkey"?
Exactly. It was, drinking alcoholism is, it's an obsession in a way. And my brain needed something to obsess over. And, I finally got sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I said, I'm just going to lean into this and just go as hard and as fast as I can. And I did. I just immersed myself. I thought about it, worked on it, every waking moment, and started to see results. And that was, that was addictive. It was
nice.
Drove me, and I haven't stopped.
Heck yeah. Oh man, that's so impressive. So when typical folks, I'll say typical because you're atypical. When people leave like a W-2 or a typical job and then somebody pays them to do a service, initially it's kind of fine. It's like, okay, I'll go mow my neighbor's yard and then they'll pay me $20, whatever. That's a business technically. But when you start scaling and you start realizing that, wait, I have inbound, I now have to deal with marketing, I now have to deal with sales, I have to deal with operations, I have to deal with customer success. And then there's like this entire channel, HR maybe, as you're hiring people, background in business. Or what did you do to solve that problem as they came in? Because I'm sure they were coming 100 miles per hour and you're like, I don't know what this business term is. Like, what are you doing at this point?
I asked for help. I'm, I guess, smart enough to know that I'm not smart enough to just figure everything out by myself. So I've never had a problem asking for help. So in 2021, I joined a incubator program in Winston-Salem. There were a lot of great resources there. I still kept in contact with some of my bosses from years before, who, I would call and speak with regularly, once every couple of weeks or so, and get guidance and advice on whatever. And then in 2021, we raised capital for the first time.
Whoa.
And that was through one of the country's biggest landscape companies. And so all of a sudden I had sort of an ad hoc HR finance department, some really sophisticated folks who could help and guide.
Nice.
And
let's talk about the raising capital part a little bit, because that's one of those bigger jumps that entrepreneurs would have to take if they want to expand rapidly, right? Which obviously you wanted to do. So can you talk about that process a little bit? How did you raise the funds, and then who helped you, if any? And then how did you know to reinvest them in the appropriate areas within your business?
So I didn't know, like, the concept of venture was totally foreign to me. I read a book called Venture Deals by Brad Felds. It about put me to sleep.
Yes.
But I got this idea in my head that I was going to raise, and I put the word out to some different founders. I leaned on my incubator a little bit. And then one morning, I got an email from this company at about 6 a.m. On a Monday morning. And by that Friday, we were kicking legal terms back and forth. Of course, relied heavily on a phenomenal lawyer, friend of my family, and we were funded a couple months later.
Wow.
It was, everyone told me that it will never happen that way again. It will never come to you.
I would agree with that, because that is extremely rare. Is, you're putting some things out there and then literally somebody reaching out to you. Either you have like this amazing product, okay? Or I think probably more important is you have this amazing potential where somebody saw that in you and said, hey, this company is really about to go somewhere. Let's invest now, get in before the market. And so what was that raised value, if you can share? And then like what valuation?
Sure. So I raised $300,000 at about a $2.2 million valuation.
Jeez.
And yeah, it just blew my mind. Everyone said that would never happen again. But then in 2022, I got a random phone call from a number I didn't recognize. I answered, and it was another customer who had just sold his business, and he wanted to be part of the business too. And so we raised again, another $300,000, but this time at a $6 million valuation.
Nice.
And that was just a little under 2 years later.
Okay, so let me put this in a timeline. So you start 2019, a couple years later, your company value is over 2 million. And then a couple years after that, your company value is over 6 million.
Correct.
Nice. So you tripled basically. And so now we're looking at 2023, 24 at this point, something like that?
Beginning of 23, we got funded the second time.
Okay, so let me ask you the obvious question here. So now we're in 2025, which has been 2 years. What kind of revenue are you doing? And then what is your company valued at today, you think?
So today we're actually in the middle of a raise right now. Today our revenue, we're around $250,000 a month. And about 80% of that is recurring, which investors love.
Yes.
And I'm trying to raise at around a $25 to $30 million valuation.
Jeez, what in the world is going on here? Tommy, what are you doing at the Sonic Combinator? You should be like on nightly news right now. Like, this is phenomenal. Or joining not the Sonic Combinator, which is a knockoff of the actual Y Combinator, in Silicon Valley. Because would you say you're a construction company or a tech company?
I'd say we're a relationship company.
Interesting. How so?
We're built on our relationships with our customers. My two goals each and every day is to keep my employees happy and my customers happy. And as long as I do those two things, everything else seems to go pretty well.
Jeez. Okay. Like, you just know the right words to say, I guess. And that's really impressive.
Sometimes, not always.
I'm genuinely very impressed. That is phenomenal. Okay, so you are skyrocketing here, right? And so through those different valuations, how much equity did you have to give up to those investors?
So the first one, I gave up 15%. Actually, it was 18%. And then the next one, I gave up just under 5%. And this round is TBD.
TBD. Okay. Is the goal to keep it under 50? You still want to be majority owner? I'm assuming you're majority owner.
Yes, correct.
Got it. Okay. So you give up 49, I think is kind of what it is. So you have like 25, 27, not good at math this morning, but 25-ish% left to give up basically. Those numbers, I don't know much about this stuff really. I've done a little bit of research and I've been part of like raises before, but through and through, you sound like you're a tech company. Like the numbers you're throwing in, basically, it's exponential build. And so I would say at this level, it's got to expand quite rapidly, right? So what are some major muscle movements you're thinking about, like office space, hiring? Are you going international? How much AI are you building into efficiencies? Like, what are those major muscle movements that your consultants are telling you to do? And then what are you thinking about? Where's your headspace?
So my biggest initiative right now is to pivot to becoming more of a SaaS company. The AI, as we're talking about, there's lots of companies, lots of money out there trying to build AI to replace our human element. We're not there yet, but we will get there. So we've built all these tools. Right now, it's a combination of Monday.com and Slack and our own homegrown. It's all kind of duct taped together, but it works. So we're trying to get that into our own platform with our own proprietary, our own system behind it to pivot to more of a SaaS company, offer the industry a self-serve, here's a tool to keep your bid pipeline organized, make smarter decisions. And then we've got a captive audience of prospects that we can offer our takeoff services to. Through that, I mentioned we specialize in site work, landscape irrigation. I would like to start acquiring some of these smaller takeoff businesses so that we can expand the human services into other scopes of work.
Got it. Okay. So you want to dedicate yourself, like brand yourself, say it's official, we're a SaaS company. Or a tech company. And now you want to build your own platform that you can then license out essentially. And then to tag on additional modules and features to that, you want to acquire additional companies that are already in the space or doing something phenomenal. And you can just package it all together. Okay, that makes sense to me. I know a typical problem which you're facing is the whole Frankenstein of capabilities, right? You mentioned Monday and Workspace and Slack and Calendly maybe and all of these other things that you kind of plug in. Now, the one we use heavily at Sonic Combinator is high level. And what it provides is, it started with a CRM. It started like 6 or 7 years ago, something like that. And now they're rivaling like Salesforce and HubSpot, not only from like the CRM aspect, but just about every technology feature that you would need or you have mentioned is possible within high level. And they also offer a white label service at like $500 a month or something simple. And then what people are doing is leveraging that capability into building features and platforms, just like you mentioned, and then white labeling and selling those in the future. Have you looked into something like that where it's like a white label, so you don't have to invest necessarily in your own development life cycle, but rather grab something and then build on top of that?
So that's pretty much exactly what we're doing now with Monday.com.
Okay.
And Monday it's a great tool. Our customers love it, but there's lots of things that it doesn't do, or it could do a lot better. The technology that what I'm envisioning that we're building isn't anything, it's not rocket science, it's nothing earth-shattering. It's just a matter of organizing data in a way that works for the construction workflow. Long timelines, lots of unstructured, messy stuff, but high stakes.
Yes.
So what we're building is not overly complex. It's just that there's really nothing out there for construction subcontractors to organize their pre-con department.
Okay, but you're still heavily invested in building your own platform, or are you continuing to build on top of other platforms? Is that your goal?
The goal ultimately is to have our own.
Really?
Our own with AI at the core. I demoed some features to some customers last week, and they all kept saying the same thing. There's all these AI tools and none of them work for us.
Right.
And so that's a big part of what we're building.
I see. So how far are we from the version 1 release of this new platform? And what is it called?
So I'm calling it Takeo.
Takeo.
And we've got the MVP elements working independently. We haven't wired them up together yet or put a UI on it, but we do have the individual components working pretty seamlessly.
Nice. And what does your software development lifecycle look like? How many people Are they spread out? Who's in charge? How do you have that doled out?
So for our MVP, it's myself and one developer in-house. And then we have a fractional CTO for the time being, who's sort of guiding, making sure that we're building it for, even though it's an MVP, building it with architecture that will support an enterprise platform. And then ultimately here, hopefully this raise will wrap up soon and we'll introduce a full team of full-time developers.
Very interesting that you started developing prior to having a team of developers. And so this is really interesting because you're right at that crux of like, okay, we're doing a raise. Technically, we could be like a $50 million company. We don't know, like, whatever. But then before we hire the folks, we're going to start building the platform. And then is that to like leverage into when you do have software developers and AI experts to build on your template that you've already kind of laid the foundation and framework for?
We started building, investors want to see something. We also started building out of necessity. So some of these AI tools we talked about earlier, these were built out of necessity. We couldn't hire enough people to keep up with all this correspondence. And so, again, we just kind of happened into it. And so yeah, we're building something. We have to have something to show. A lot of investors don't like the idea of our business being human driven. So we're showing them that we can build tech too.
Wow, that's amazing. And what are you building this on? Is it going to be Claude as well, Takeo?
No, I'm hoping we can spin up our own. This is a part of my experiment here with Quen.
Hey.
To have our own fine-tuned model specific for construction documents and different versions for different scopes of work.
I see. Okay. So when does this round end? Is it just when you like hit the mark, or is there a time limit?
Yeah, so I have 2 potential leads. I should know something by early January on the leads. And then I've got 3 or 4 follow-ons, both institutional and a handful of customers as well.
Nice. Okay. So this fractional CTO that you have, is that like you had a relationship beforehand, or did you hire him just for this particular purpose?
Hired just for this purpose. Went through a company called Fraction, who they've been awesome, and they placed me with someone who was great for a time. We sort of hit the limit with them, and they got us a new one. Awesome people, and yeah, I love working with them.
Wow. Okay. So you, the fractional CTO, and then one developer, right?
Yep.
This is akin to what all the AI experts are saying these days. We're gonna see very soon a one-person billion-dollar company. Right, which is just all one person behind the curtains, if you will. And I shouldn't have been shocked. I got to be honest, I was shocked when you said it's just you and a CTO and one developer that's kind of putting this platform together for a potentially $50-60 million company that you're sitting on. But really, that's very close to reality. That's more close to reality than we were 5 years ago. I think we should probably flip that paradigm starting right now. Not that I came up with this, but it's exactly that. It should be more shocking to say, well, why do you have a software development lifecycle? Why do you have all these standard operating procedures all over the place, and overhead and admin and HR and people taking leave and people getting sick and sprints and all this kind of stuff? When you have things like Replit, Lovable, Base 44, I've built platforms on Base 44 that I couldn't dream imaginable before. Where I was trying to build software before with some folks. We did some raise as well, and we got some money together, and we're going to go do it. And, these ticket items are like $100,000 for this, $50,000 for that. And it's quite a level of commitment and investment to say, hey, this better work. Otherwise our investors are not going to be happy. We probably just have one shot at this. And then the time alone, we could be 6 months, 12 months out from launch. And then if it doesn't work, what do we do? We got to go back to like ground one. Whereas now, I think over a weekend, launched agentrage.com. I'm really excited about that. It's a competitor to N8N. N8N has like these workflows and modules that nodes you connect together, but the learning curve is a little bit high. And so folks that are not familiar with the APIs and nodes and connections and headers and all this kind of stuff, I just created a wizard that just had 3 steps. And then you plug in the tool that you want and it just works. You just kind of put it up there for free for people to use. I know you're using Claude, but if you use something like a Base 44, Lovable, Replit, and there's so many, and Gemini itself has like crushed the competition recently on just building on Gemini. It would still be your platform. You just wouldn't have to build from scratch.
And Replit is I spun up a whole website with a full-blown clickable mock-up, all done in Replit over a few weekends.
Yes.
Yeah, Replit is one of my favorites. And now Anti-Gravity, my developer is head over heels in love with Anti-Gravity, Google's
Right.
agent-driven tool. And then N8N, I recently discovered I can connect Claude code to my N8N instance.
Yes.
And just tell it to build automations, and it eliminates some of that learning curve required for N8.
Jeez, isn't this phenomenal? Like we're going places for sure. And you're riding this wave, and because you started, let's say about 6 years ago, basically, I would say you're well ahead of the curve right now because you already have the relationships built, which is like number one, right? Like ultimately it just comes down to like, who do you know and what level of trust you've built with them. And you've done a phenomenal job, obviously, with that. And then it's, how do you work with your team, which seems like you're doing a phenomenal job at. You just enable them, right? It's like that whole followership mentality, right? Where you are there to support your team. It's like, what do you need? Okay, you need this? I got you. You need funding? I got you. And you just kind of keep pushing and supporting. And then you let those folks just surprise you. And that with the AI technology as well, I mean, this is big stuff. That's really, really cool. So where do you see yourself in the next 2 years? Let's say this round happens really, really well. Are you thinking like exit? Are you thinking expanding, more acquisitions? What is going on?
Yeah, I think expanding into as many trades as it makes sense. It does require a lot of human expertise to do what we do. So yeah, expanding via acquisition, organic growth, and then I do see an exit at some point in the future, 5, maybe 10 years down the road. But I don't know that I could sit still or go. I don't play golf.
Yeah,
I do something else.
You need to focus on something else, right? Because like you have that addictive personality, and I do as well. It's like when I find something, I have to like squeeze every possible juice out of it to see what my threshold is, right? What is that limitation that I have, like physically, mentally, and I will just drive and drive and drive until I hit that wall, and then I'm like, okay, I guess this is my limit, and then let me like pivot. Basically, are you kind of the same thing?
Exactly like that. Yes. Yeah. I started exercising for the first time in my life about 4 years ago, and now I go to CrossFit in the morning and I go meet a personal trainer in the afternoon. I'm 41 years old and I'm doing 2 a days, and I run.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm 41 as well. Wow, amazing. Potential exit down the road, acquisitions potentially, just grow. You're not tired of it. This is still feeding you energy. And I imagine you wake up excited and you just want to like run 100 miles per hour. And then a couple last questions before we end this. How did you settle on the whole monkey theme? I thought it was hilarious when I saw it. I'm like, Takeoff Monkey, this monkey, and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, this is really cool. It's catchy. How did you settle on that?
That was the idea, just something fun, approachable, catchy. Usually in many construction offices, there's like a new guy or a young guy or, the boss's son or something who is tasked with doing takeoffs because it's mind numbing. Nobody wants to do it. And they are sometimes referred to as the Takeoff Monkey.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So it's got a nice little, term to it when people from construction are jumping in. Yeah, I think we just called them the FNGs, right? Like these new guys, they just don't know what they're doing. In the military, I have a military background, and it was always like, you would haze them to tell them like, go get me an ID10T form, which spelled idiot, if you write it out. And then they'd walk around the office, be like, hey, I'm looking for this, form. And everyone just kind of have this inside joke on the new guy, basically. That's phenomenal. Thanks, Tommy. I really appreciate it. I know you have your website out there. We'll put it all over the video in the description, but where can people find you? How can they get involved in your project?
If you want to find me, shoot me an email, tommy@takeoffmonkey.com. Super easy. I'd love to hear from anyone who's passionate about this stuff.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah. And especially when you expand, I imagine like you're going to need AI experts and all sorts of capabilities coming your way. So thank you very much, Tommy. Really appreciate it. Tommy Lather, everyone. Find him. Thank you for joining.